Yes, and we are underway here. We've got people flooding in, so this is going to be really, really, really exciting. I've just already been chatting to Tim for the last 10 minutes, and just the way his mind works is pretty incredible. And we're obviously going to be diving into this art of green reading, which is probably the most underrated component of golf, in all of golf. And if you get right, is obviously going to help you knock strokes off your game. But first of all, Tim, just thank you so much for being here. This is going to be a really, really incredible hour.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, man. I've been looking forward to this, so I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, the sign-ups were incredible. We've had just an amazing response to this, which tells me straight away that everyone knows that they can't read greens, and there must be a system out there that's going to help them. And so what we're going to do today is we're initially going to talk about Tim's background, but we're also going to talk about this incredible ball marker, this device that he has created, which when it is explained to you makes things so incredibly simple, and it's just, I mean, it's already flying off the shelves, as Tim will tell you, but I think all of you are going to absolutely love it. But first of all, Tim, let's just talk about you. I would really love to get into your history. And look, you caddied for Bryson for over 6.5 years, but can we go back to even before that? Do you mind, let's go back to talk about the guy that you are and how you came to eventually, start caddying and, and all of that. I'd love to hear it.
Okay. Yeah. I grew up in Texas. I got out of high school and went straight into the military. I was in the Air Force. And when I got out, I moved to the DC area and I was going to be a police officer, but there was a hiring freeze. So I ended up playing a lot of golf and getting in the golf business. So I was a PGA member at one time. And in 2003, I moved to Bandon Dunes, and I was just looking for an opportunity. I was trying to get out of the golf business, and I'd been fired from my previous head pro job. So anybody out there, do not hire me to be your head pro. But it just wasn't my cup of tea. So, but I do love, obviously, golf. And so I went to Bandon to kind of, find out what was out there, meet some people, and ended up caddying and falling in love with that lifestyle. Started playing a ton of golf, got my amateur status back. So what was unique about that, I started fitting putters for David Adele, and then got into green reading with AimPoint actually at the time. And a buddy of mine, Jason Goldsmith, which he's a performance coach on the PGA Tour, but he's a longtime friend and it's kind of helped me develop this green reading tool. But started. So while I was caddying at Bandon, I was putter fitting. I was teaching green reading, and then I got an opportunity to go out on tour. I'd met Bryson. I taught him AimPoint when he was 15 years old, and just kept in touch with him. And played a lot of golf, and then finally got an opportunity to caddy for Tyler Aldridge on the PGA Tour. A friend of mine, Mark McConnell, set me up with him, and that ended up moving into Bryson, and the rest is history. So
yeah, it's incredible, and it's so you really were into green reading from the get-go. This is obviously something that has interested you. Why do you think that was? What was it that about green reading in particular that was so attractive?
Well, the reality was I was a terrible putter. I was a really good ball striker. I was a decent amateur, and but I really made a commitment to playing better golf. And so the ball striking wasn't the problem. It was the putting. And so once I started understanding and dissecting, hey, what goes into being a great putter? Obviously I fit putters for David Adele. He makes an amazing product. And then, met Mark Sweeney at a Mike Adams school. I was doing the putter fitting portion of it. And he showed us that there was another way to read greens. And I went straight back to Bandon and dove right into it. And really accelerated my learning process with this, because I was on a green every single day caddying. And so as I started doing that, I wanted to be a better putter, and the green reading portion of it was really what did it.
Right. Okay. So then moving into working with Bryson and how that evolved the way you looked at, green reading, because obviously I would imagine he would have pulled and demanded a lot of you and asked a lot of questions that would have helped you solve a lot of problems. But do you want to talk about those 6.5 years and what they were like, obviously, because it, semi-revolutionized the game, what he did, obviously, with the distance thing, but probably more the way he was willing to tinker and discover and try things. Do you want to just talk about that experience?
Yeah. So like I said, I met Bryson when he was 15, and he was a big kid. He was probably 6 foot at the time, 185 pounds, 15-year-old, and just loved golf. And we really hit it off. And, I remember one night at pizza talking to him, and just the way his mind worked. He was talking to me about time travel and the fact that it's possible, but we'll never figure it out. So I knew that I was dealing with, not a normal, 15-year-old. But anyway, we played a lot of golf together and developed a relationship. And when I got on tour with him, he'd been out on tour. I never even thought in a million years that I'd end up caddying for Bryson. He had a caddy at the time. I was caddying for someone else. And actually, I ended up, Tyler and I broke up, and I was heading back to Amarillo, Texas, to see my dad, and I got a phone call. So anyway, if you ask Bryson, he would tell you that he feels like he is not as skilled as other players. And so he's always had to work harder to be the player he is. And the fact that he is so open-minded and willing to try out anything, I could bring, I'd have an idea and I'd say, hey, I was thinking about this last night. And he'd go, okay, what is it? Let's work through it. And he'd go, oh man, that sounds amazing. Let's try it. Or, yeah, it's a terrible idea. Let's not do it. But he was always open to it. And that was kind of the cool thing about Bryson, really. And the side that people don't see is that he makes people great around him. If you're not always pushing the envelope, always striving to be the best you can be, to help him be the best, he'll move on. And I've seen that in his relationships with people, but he is a grinder, makes people around him better. And he was amazing to work for.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. And let's talk about like what you would do before a putt between the two of you. Like, could you even, like, in the fastest way you possibly can, try and describe like the process, because it would have been so unique and probably no one else on tour would have gone into the depth that he did in like a 3-minute period as he's trying to assess a putt and a line. Could you go through that pretty quickly?
Sure, absolutely. So, on the PGA Tour at the time, up until this year, we had green maps available. But so his first thing he'd do is he'd paste his putt, very first thing. And then the way the green maps were, they were great, but if you didn't know exactly where the hole was and where your ball was in relation, you were getting incorrect data. So what we'd do is we'd triangulate. I would pace. He would pace his ball off and then pace it to a sprinkler head, and I would pace from a sprinkler head to the hole, and we would triangulate. And there was a time where we used a compass, so we would draw an X. If it had the maps, we'd go, wait, the hole's not here; it's actually here, and then our ball is here. We'd triangulate both those positions, and we'd do that fairly quickly, so we'd know exactly where we were on the hole, on our contour map. But then he would say, I'd ask him, he'd say, hey, Tim, I'm 20 feet. Okay. I'd say, what percentage of slope do you like? I'd have a green book. He'd have a green book. He'd say, I like 2%. And if I felt like it were more, I'd say something like, well, it is 2.5 at the hole. Yeah, you're right. I do like a little more than 2, maybe 2.2%. Okay, great. So we'd know we're 20 feet. We'd know what our percentage of slope was. And then he would look at his charts, and he actually used numbers. He was a vector putting guy. And if people aren't familiar with that, it's basically using the high ZBL or zero break line and having a math equation that would take you up the ZBL as an aim point. So he would look at his chart, come up with a number, and then we would do speed. So I'd say, hey, I like you at a 45-degree down angle on a 2% slope. We're 20 feet. We need to hit that 80% of the way, which would be a 16-foot putt. He'd go, I like that. And so then he would say, okay, I need a 7.7 ball speed. Okay. And then he would execute. So that would be a 6.8 ball speed would be 16 feet, but on an 11 stimp green. So, that's what we'd do, and I would stimp every green. So I would know, because some greens are faster than others, just because if they have a lot of slope on one green, they really can't cut at the same height, right? So that it'll be a little slower. And so that would be important to know. So I would stimp every green during the practice rounds as well. So we always
amazing. That is incredible. And so how often would there be conflict that would then sort of delay the process? Because obviously you've got to do this so fast, and not to hold up the play. Like, how often would there be conflict, and how would you resolve something like that?
Yeah, we really, I cannot remember one time that we had conflict on the green. Now, one of the biggest mistakes we ever made, I'll never forget, was the 12th hole, Torrey Pines. Bryson was tied for the lead, and he had a 50-footer, 52-footer, I believe, up this, it was like a 2% slope. Then it went up like a 10% slope, and then it was a 2% up top. Well, we just averaged it instead of breaking it up, and he hit it 9 feet by, missed the putt.
Wow.
Made bogey, slipped on 13, made double, and, the chance to win back-to-back U.S. Opens were gone. I'll never forget that moment. Yeah. So, we would make mistakes, but that's one that really glared out. But we just went through our process, and it was what it was. We were fully committed to it.
Yeah, and I'd imagine that's why you work so well together. And maybe I could imagine, like, coming out of that relationship, finding it hard to go and caddy again, because it's like no one is probably ever going to demand of you the same, sort of information, which would have been so stimulating to you.
Right. Yeah. No, it was great because my mind works that way too,
Yeah.
I was a decent amateur. I think I was a +3 or +4 at one time. But I got there from having good ball striking, but again, knowing, being able to control distance, being able to, roll my ball end over end and having a great green reading technique was really important to me. And I felt like I always had to work harder, just like Bryson. So, I was always tinkering as well, just like he is. So we fit. It was nice.
And so you've used a little bit of terminology today, and you've mentioned a couple of things which have obviously had a huge influence on, we'll talk about the ball marker in a second. But you've talked about AimPoint, vector putting, and, different terms like, slope, which for the average person out there who hasn't done any of these things, wouldn't even know, well, how's he even judging slope? Like, what percentage of slope? How are they even getting to that number? Can you sort of give people, it's difficult in a relatively short amount of time, but talk about the things that have influenced you, what AimPoint is and how you sort of use that system.
Yeah. So there were 5 things really that you needed to know. And the most important that most people don't do is find the straight putt. If you're on a planar surface, so we're talking one high, one low, so one direction of slope, which is most of our putts. The average golfer, probably 90 to 95% of the putts that he has is on a planar surface. So one direction of break. And if you find where the straight putt is, you'll never misread direction. Tour players misread direction all the time. And if you find straight, it's impossible. So let's assume that I find the uphill straight putt. If my ball is to the right of that, it has to break left. If it's to the left of it, it breaks right. All the way until you get to the high straight putt. So there's 2 straight putts on a planar surface. So most putts always break. If, again, 360 degrees circle, correct? If there's only 2 straight putts, then 358 putts break. Okay? So finding straight was one of the most important things. 2, knowing how far you are from the hole. People would always ask me, Tim, why do you pace your putts? I was a really good putter. They'd go, why do you pace your putts? And I'd say, so I know how far to hit it. And most people don't pace their putts. And I find that really strange. I will laser something from 253 yards, but when I get 12 feet from the hole, I don't want to know how far I am from the hole. That seems crazy to me. Yeah. And so it's like the closer we get to the hole, the less accurate I want to be. I disagree with that. I think that your subconscious, when it knows how far you are from the hole, and your subconscious knows, your subconscious always knows, but now when you pace it, your subconscious or your conscious mind matches your subconscious, and your speed control is going to be inherently better. So that's the other thing. And then a third thing would be what angle you are to straight. So a lot of times people, especially as a caddy, people say, hey, am I uphill or downhill? Well, you're above the 90-degree angle, which is truly flat. So it has to be down, even though it does not look it, right? So golf course superintendents, there are optical illusions built into golf courses. And, so a good example, course that they always played on tour was, the American Express. It used to be at the PGA Palmer Private. One of the rounds, the final 2 rounds would be. And an architect told me this, if you have a big mountain and a green, so there's a green here and a big mountain here. Okay. If the green were perfectly flat up next to a steep mountain, it would appear tilted back toward the mountain. Right. So everybody would always say, hey, in Palm Desert, everything breaks to Indio, or in Phoenix, it breaks toward Pinnacle Peak. Well, what if I'm on the other side of Pinnacle Peak? It doesn't break uphill, right? Gravity only does that. So knowing the angle you were to straight was obviously a big thing as well. So, and then again, percentage of slope, knowing that. Now, we had contour maps, which is great. If you don't have that, you need a level to go out and do your tournament prep. But now they don't allow any of that. So people are trying to feel it with their feet.
Yep.
And the reality is that if your feet are 11 inches apart, okay, and you're trying to feel slope, what you're feeling is each percentage of slope would be a 1/16 of an inch. So basically trying to feel the height of a quarter. Okay. And again, there's a flaw in that as well, because if I were on a firm surface like cement, okay, and I felt a 1%, if I got onto a soft green, I may not feel anything. So again, it's not a perfect system, but
yeah, and that would drive me crazy. I would imagine.
Correct. Yes. And I never was able to develop I never tried to develop the feel with my feet, again, because we always had maps. So, and I used a lot. Yeah.
Super interesting. So, okay, I've actually heard you talk in the past about how all greens are the same, or at the very least, there's like 3 different sort of types of putts that you are going to have. Can you talk to those? And because I think most people would think the reason I can't read greens is because every single green is completely different. Everything looks different. There's optical illusions, as you say, but you don't actually believe that greens are that different from each other.
No, there are really only 3 types, three slopes that we putt across. A planar surface that's one high, one low. Then we have what would be a crown, okay, and then we have a saddle, okay. Yeah. So dip under. Oh, can't show it that way, right? Yep. Those are real, and then the 4th would be a bowl. But there are very few of those. The only bowl that I know of is the 4th hole or 3rd hole at Old McDonald, in Bandon Dunes. There's a drain down in the bottom of that, and that's, that is a true bowl. But really, those 3 are all we put across. Well, every green has those shapes. So it doesn't matter if I'm in Augusta or if I'm in Bandon. Gravity is the only thing that affects break, but the ball is always going downhill. So if we understand our highs and lows, or our high anchors, low anchors, or just the straight putts, then green reading is predictable. Yeah, absolutely. Well, that might be a really good opportunity to play this video, I think, Tim, that we've got that you've created, which it definitely talks to what you've already been speaking. But let me just get this up really quickly. Here we go. So this is all the information you sort of need to know to understand where
there are 5 things you need to know
ideas have come from to make this
market. Where your straight putt is. You need to know your friction value or stimp speed. You need to know how far your ball is from the hole. You need to know what angle your ball is to straight. And you need to know what percentage of slope you're putting across. And if you know those 5 things, then break is predictable. A perfect example would be if I were on a 2% slope and I were at the 3 o'clock or 90-degree angle, so a side putting directly across the slope, on a 2-foot putt, a 5-foot putt, a 10-foot putt, or a 20-foot putt, the break for the 2-foot putt would be an inside right putt. The break on the 5-foot putt would be 2 inches outside the hole. The 10-foot putt would be 11 inches, and the 20-footer would be 23 inches. So imagine all 4 cups lined up in a row. If you put a piece of string and connected the breaks of all those holes from 23 inches back to the ball, the break would all be in a line, and we'll demonstrate that. So because now we've taken the math out and we said, hey, this is just an angle that goes to infinity. The further we get away from the hole, the greater the angle which creates more break. Now we technically don't need to do the math. The math has already been done if we know the angle to the straight putt.
Right. Okay. So let me just jump out of there really quickly. So there's a fair bit of information there. Like the thing with you, Tim, obviously, the way your mind works, like that makes, perfect sense, and it's really, really easy for, you to understand. But do you want to talk to people about this marker that you've got, right? You can even hold it up to the screen and then get into, how you want people to use it, how you're using it. But then what we will do, I think, is that talk about those things that you just described in that video, because there are some things that are required on top of this marker, aren't there? Like you need to understand like step speed and these things. And we can talk to how students can get good at acquiring that information when they're on the course. But yeah, let's talk about this marker.
Yeah, can you actually go to the picture of the marker? That'd be great.
Yeah. Okay.
So what I will tell you is that if you want to make green reading really difficult, I can show you how to do that.
Right.
And everything I know about green reading now, I've completely thrown out.
Right.
With the exception of finding straight. Okay. Can you click on that? I didn't see the marker. The marker's not up.
Oh, is it? Okay. Apologies. Let me just. It should be. Here we go. All right. There we go.
Okay.
Can you see that?
Yeah. So you can see that. So Bob Bettinardi is helping me with this project, and he's making the markers for me. They're made out of 303 stainless. So it's a thick, heavy ball marker. So, hopefully you won't lose it. But if you look at the picture on the left, you'll see that there's a marker with 9 lines. And the center line represents straight. So if you were to, so I'm going to kind of walk you through the process here.
Yeah, let's do that.
So you need a line on your ball. And a lot of people don't like the line on the ball and the reason that I hear is that when they stand over the putt, it doesn't look like it's pointed where they want it to. So a lot of people see lines. Some people see lines left, some see them right, or the line is too curved. So anyhow, but the great thing about having a line on your ball is that it will tell you if you've hit a stroke perfectly or not. If the line rolls end over end, you've hit the ball with a square club face. Okay, which is how we start the ball on line, and is very important. So just having a line on your ball, regardless of what green reading system you have or use, is really important because it will give you that feedback of whether or not you did hit a good putt. So our process is, and Baden, I want you to imagine that you're on, and I would have everybody out there that's listening to this now, go to your favorite course, the course you've played the most in your life, and I want you to think about the very first hole on that golf course, and you've hit a putt to a back left pin, 10 feet pin high. Okay? So Baden, what course is that for you?
It's the old course at the National down the Mornington Peninsula here in Australia.
Okay. So now you've hit your ball in there, and in the audience, I want you in your mind to walk through this too. I want you to imagine a back left pin at your home course or your favorite course, and you're 10 feet pin high. So first thing we do is we mark our ball. Yeah. And what I want you to do with the line on your ball, the very first thing we do is we aim the line on your ball at the dead center of the hole. All right. And so, excuse me real quick, let me grab this. So what I like to do to help make sure that we do that properly is once I have the line, in the general vicinity, I like to hold my putter up. I'm left eye dominant. Okay. So I like to hold this on my left hip, left side of my face. And I reference the hole and the line on the ball to make sure it's perfect. Okay. So I would use the edge of your putter, the edge of the putter shaft, to make sure that it's aimed perfectly. So once you've done that and the ball now is aimed at the dead center of the hole, you match the center line on the marker with the line on your ball. All right. So now then you can pick your ball up and clean it and get out of the way. So now once you've done that, that means the marker is now aimed at the very center of the hole. All right. And the ball does fit in that little V. Okay. So now you're going to ask yourself 4 questions. Does your putt, the putt that you have now, or everybody's thinking about in your mind, is that putt straight or does it break? So what's your answer for that?
It's breaking.
Okay. And the next question is which way is it breaking?
From the right to left, so right to left break.
Yep, it's breaking left overall. So
Yep.
what you've done with those two questions is the first question, you said it broke, so you've eliminated the center line. And now you said it breaks to the left, so that eliminates the 4 right angles. So now you're using one of the 4 left angles to project your ball out right, like in the video you saw before. So now I like to label these lines as the first angle left of the center line, the white line, would represent flat or subtle break. The second angle would be average or obvious break. The third angle would be steep. And the fourth angle would be severe or max break. So again, the hole on your favorite course, your pin high right, 10 feet, you said it breaks right to left. You're using the left side. So we're going to use a process of elimination here. Is that slope that you're putting across, the side slope, not uphill, downhill, but the side slope, is it flat or steep? It can only be one of the two.
Steep.
Okay, steep. So you've eliminated the first and second angle. Now you're working on the third and fourth. Now, is it steep or is it severe?
It's closer to severe, probably. Severe.
Okay. So then what you would do is you'd take your line on your ball, you'd match it to the fourth angle, and pick your mark up and putt.
Yeah. Amazing.
Okay. Now, after you've hit a putt, here's the problem with what I think people, and you can tell me if I'm getting off subject here, but something that is really, really important is that I don't believe that people are as bad at putters as they think.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm going to explain that. If I put someone in a prison cell, okay, with a carpet, and I said, hey, you can come out of here as soon as you can roll this ball end over end, your line perfectly end over end. How long do you think that would take?
A couple of days, probably.
Okay, but you could do it, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, a rank beginner could do that. I think a person that's playing golf would be able to figure it out in 15 minutes to an hour.
Yeah,
okay?
Yeah.
I think our putting strokes are pretty good. It's the shortest stroke that we make. It should be the easiest.
Yep.
I think that I know this for a fact. Our brain cannot do complex math, right? Mm-hmm. Like we said in the beginning, hey, we need 5 things to read a green properly. Okay, we need to know where straight is. We need to know what our friction value is. We need to know what angle we are to straight. We need to know how far we are from the hole. We need to know what percentage of slope we're putting across. And that is a math equation. Now, unless you're a supercomputer, you can't do the math on that in the time that it takes to hit a putt. So I think that we think we're really good green readers. And the reality is that we're terrible green readers. Yeah. And that we're better putters than we think. So part of this, there's a nice feedback loop that I think is really important. When you hit a putt, instead of just going, man, I'm a terrible putter, I missed. I think it's important to say, hey, was my speed good? That's obvious. I can tell if I hit it. I like to hit the ball a foot past the hole. And everybody, your delivery speed is your delivery speed. So there's no right or wrong. If you want to hit it 3 feet by, fine. If you want to die it, that's fine too. But whatever your delivery speed is, you can see when you hit a putt where the ball finishes by the hole if you had a good speed or not. So if I had good speed, that's a positive. Okay, did I roll my ball end over end? Yes, I did. Then I hit a perfect putt. I just misinterpreted the slope. Okay, so I see so many players, and I fall guilty of it too. Before I started using this marker and having my feedback loop, was that I wasn't giving myself a true chance to say, wait, I had a good putt. I just missed this aspect of it, right? Or, hey, I had the right break. Rolled my ball end over end, but I had poor speed, right? And I think it's really important to do that if we're trying to become better putters. Being positive is a good thing. And actually realizing that you are doing some things right, I think is a really good thing. We, as a group, and I see this with the tour players, my read was great. I missed my line, or I missed, my speed. But these guys work on their starting lines constantly. You can't go to a tour event and watch a guy not use a device to start the ball on line. And they putt for hours, the best players in the world. And the reason, they miss putts is primarily because of their read is incorrect. So this marker will certainly help you read the greens. It's always going to be one of these angles. And we have half angles as well. So for an example, for your putt, I asked you if it was steep or severe. You had to think about it, and you said it was more towards steep. You didn't say it was steep. So maybe it could have been between the third and fourth angle. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
So I think that if people, Dave Pells did a big study on green reading, and he said that everybody, and correct me if I'm wrong here, because it's been a while since I've read it, but Dave Pells, I think he did 1,000 amateurs, 500 PGA golf professionals, and 100 tour players. And he tested their green reading, and he said, as a whole, as a group, we underread our putts by half. So I was in the military, and we had a portion of our training, which was night navigation. And so we would get a compass, and they would say, here's your map, here's your compass. And we had to find what would be an OB stake, basically a white stake in the woods somewhere. And we had to hit like 6 of these points in a 10-hour period. And they'd say, okay, it's dark. Here's your compass. We have a red flashlight, and we have a map. Here's where you are. And we have to get to the final objective, right, in 10 hours. So they would, so our first coordinate that we'd have to do is we'd have to, go 500 meters, or excuse me, 2,000 meters, at this heading. And if we weren't exactly on that heading, we would miss the stake.
Well, yeah.
So once we'd walk, 2,000 meters, we would be within probably 20, 30 yards. So we'd search for that stake. And then we'd go on our next coordinate, right? And we'd do this 5 or 6 times until we got to the end objective. Well, if the compass were off by 1 degree, right, of 360, we would not find that first stake. And then we'd be off forever. Well, I think that's the same with our green reading. Again, we think our green reading is true north, and it's not. We are not good at it. Yeah. So this is something that I think as people start to understand and focus on, your putting experience is going to be delightful. And that's the feedback I've had so far, and I'm really, really excited about it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It is just, we neglect it so much, and maybe it is because our brains just can't do the calculations, as you say, and that's a bit too hard. I'll just leave it up to art. You know what I mean? I'll just feel it in there. I'll do, which is what Aaron Badley used to say, that he's like, I just get the vibe of it, and I just hit it in, sort of thing. But not everyone's obviously Aaron Badley. But I think that is how our brains work when it comes to green reading. But if you just put that little bit more science into it, and obviously simplified science, that's what you've obviously done here with the marker. It's incredible. But there's still just a couple of things. Actually, there's a few questions here. And if anyone has any questions, just let us know. But someone's just asking, is this being recorded? There's so much information here. I completely appreciate that. Yes, we are recording this, and we will send it on to everyone so that you can digest it and process it in your own time. So Rod's actually asked, is there a good definition between steep and severe? Look, I think you answered that, because you were saying, look, it doesn't have to be exact, does it? It's if you feel like it sits somewhere between those two, you can actually go with that as well.
Yeah, and what's happening, I've been playing with friends or people that own the marker and use it, and it's funny that they'll hit a putt and they go, oh, I should have played that on a 1.5, not a 2, and right. They're quantifying, now they're quantifying their miss, right? Yeah. Whereas before we never quantify it. I never hit a putt and go, oh, I should have played 8 inches instead of 4 inches, or I should have played 5 instead of 3. I just don't hear that ever on the golf course. It's like, I missed the putt. I'm a shitty putter, and that's not the reality. We need to give ourselves a break.
Totally. And as you said, the instinctive thing to do is to go and fix your putting stroke, because you think that, you've got a bad putting stroke, but it's more likely you just don't know where to start the ball. Okay. So, this is the obvious question as well, Tim, is like, from Jay, is like, this seems like really interesting concept, but is this tournament legal?
It is, yes. And there's 3 criteria for a ball marker, okay, to make it legal. One is that it cannot be more than 1 inch in height. And as you can see, it's not. This is let's see. It is an eighth of an inch high. Okay, so 2/4 high. So it's less than an inch high. It cannot be more than 2 inches in any horizontal or any direction, which it's not. And thirdly, it can't gauge, calculate, or measure slope or any other characteristic or condition. And it doesn't. It's just a piece of metal. You as the golfer make all the decisions. So it is legal. And it has been, we have players that have used it on tour. Adam Svensson has used it. I caddied for him for a bit. Amazing guy. He wanted to use it at Travelers, and so we got a ruling on it officially from the PGA Tour. They sent it to Carter Rich at the USGA, and they took pictures of it and talked about it, and it was fine.
Amazing.
And there is a ruling that if anybody needs, I'm more than happy to send the exact ruling to you.
Yeah, fantastic. And I mean, as we just discussed, Tim, like people need help with this as well. Like, I think that if we're doing what we've done with golf clubs over the past 20 years, this is probably the least of people's concerns and what they really need to get better. So, yeah, let's hope it stays that way as well. So, there's a couple of questions here around, AimPoint and how this sort of relates to that, and if it's appropriate for users, for AimPoint users, and how they calculate slope with their feet. So, it's still the exact same thing. Is that right, Tim?
Yeah, I mean, so technically, if you have different green speeds, you would need different angles. But there is a way to calibrate it and, to find out what speed you are. And, something I wanted to bring up, and I hope this will help people understand about green reading. Let's say that you played your favorite golf course and the first hole you hit it 10 feet and you read the putt with your eyes to be a cup out right. And you hit it a cup out right and it went dead center of the hole. Perfect read, perfect speed, perfect stroke. Okay? And let's say the greens were 9 that day. So you go back the next day and the superintendent has double cut and rolled. And now the greens are 11. And you hit it in the exact same spot and they did not change the pin. And you go, well, I played a cup yesterday. I'm going to play a cup today, but that's not the reality. 2 stimps faster, it's probably 4 to 5 inches more break.
Yeah.
So to think that we can look at something and interpret that isn't real. Now, what I will tell you is that using these angles becomes really intuitive. You start to adjust to it really quickly. So there obviously is going to be some failure with it, and it happens quickly. You'll start to change the way of your green reading process. And this is a process. The best part about it is that, you're being consistent every time you read a putt. And your understanding of slope, your interpretation of slope, that really happens quickly.
Yeah. How would you suggest people try and understand Stimp and speed? Is that just that's very difficult, obviously, for the average golfer. Like, is there tools they can use or methods they can use to really get good at reading the speed of greens?
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
The Stimp, for example, is, look, my home course here, they say the greens during our member guest run 13 or 14. You've heard that a lot, right?
Yeah.
The reality is that on the PGA Tour, with the finest courses in the world that they play week in, week out, and they're in the best conditions of any courses I've ever seen, we've only putted on Stimp 12 2 times, once at Memorial and once on Saturday at TPC Boston. Other than that, we've always putted on the 95% of the courses are running about 11 Stimp. We get to Hawaii, you go to Kapalua, they're running about 9. At Augusta, we've never used our Stimp, our mathematical numbers that PuttView's given us on more than 10 Stimp at Augusta. And the reason is they can't. If all the slope at Augusta, if the greens truly ran 13, the ball would not sit on the green. You'd only have a couple of pin placements on every hole. Like the 6th hole would be impossible.
Yeah. You
could keep the ball on the green. So, there is a way to test Stimp. And for the instructors out there, for the crazy amateur that wants to get out there and test this, there's something called angle of repose. And so if you take a golf ball and you place it on a slope, so basically what that means is if It's the angle or percentage of slope that gravity will move an object. So if I place a ball on a really steep part of the green, let's say it's 9% slope, and the ball will roll on its own. Well, if I keep slowly moving the ball down the slope, okay, to less slope until the ball will just barely, it'll sit for a minute and then move on its own with gravity. If you measure that slope, right?
Yep.
That correlates to a stimp speed. And that's probably the most accurate way. And that's how I did that. It takes about 10 seconds to do it on every green. So I would carry a level when I walked the golf course on Monday, I would stimp all the greens.
Wow.
So that is a truly accurate way to do that.
Yes.
Most golfers probably just go, boy, these greens are fast or slow or average. Right?
Yeah.
Like a marker, right? You're going to get to that where you go, hey, this is an average slope, or this is steep or fast, right? I mean, it's just like we do green reading.
Totally. Yeah, cool. And just on that really quickly, there's another question. And I know you sort of brushed over it a little bit, and you said you don't care about the speed of the ball around the hole too much. Like if you want to be aggressive and hit it 3 feet past, that's completely fine. If you want to dive in, is there a preferred speed? Like, is there obviously, if it's traveling a little bit slower, it's got a bit more chance of actually falling into the cup. But obviously, if you're nice and aggressive, then it takes impurities out of the roll, I'd imagine. So, what's your preference, and then what would you probably tell people to do?
Well, so when I said that, I meant that I wasn't dictating how hard you need to hit your putt. That's up to each and every golfer. Obviously, the capture rate of the hole, okay, the hole shrinks as the ball rolls by. So the most effective capture rate speed would be dead dying. The ball would sit on the lip and then fall in. And that would make our hole the biggest, right? We'd be using a 4 1/4 inches of the hole. That would be our best speed. The reality is that if we tried to do that, we'd probably leave it short more than trying, we'd be short of the hole. So I always Bryson liked 2 feet. I like a foot. He liked 2 feet because he felt like the ball held its line more with the imperfections in the greens. And obviously there's a lumpy donut around the hole. So he liked 2 feet. So again, that's up to everybody. But again, as the distance past the hole, the ball travels, the more our hole shrinks.
Yeah, totally. Okay, and then we've got a really good question here on multi. What do you do with multi breaks? Like, how do you approach that stuff?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I never in my life thought about double breakers this way, or triple breakers for that matter.
Right.
And until I started using this marker, you still aim the ball directly at the center of the hole. Now, think about a double breaker. Let's say a putt goes 2 feet right to left and 4 feet left to right. So typically we'd say, I'm going to play this 2 feet out left, right? All double breakers are eventually straight at some point, and then there's more direction one way. Correct? Yeah. So all we do in this process is say, so I know this is a double breaker. Which way does it break the most? It breaks more right. So I'd be using the right side of the marker to project out left, and then I'm just rating that break on a scale of 1 to 4, flat, average, steep, or severe. You'll be amazed at how I've been amazed truly about how close I get with double breakers using this marker. And look, I don't want to sound like a salesman. Yeah. I would not put this marker out if I knew it didn't work. I took it to Bryson. I wasn't caddying for him. Bryson and I are still friends, right? And I want nothing more than for him to be successful. He's done so much for me in my life, and I appreciate it. Was he difficult to work for at times? Absolutely. Did we argue? And was it, were we on vacation every day? No, absolutely not. But you know what? We always said, hey, what happens on the course stays on the course. It's a battlefield out there. But I genuinely love the guy. He's a friend of mine. So when I did this, I took this to him, and he said, Tim, I'm going to have to test it. And I said, Bryson, do you think I'd give you something that wasn't tested? And he goes, I know you wouldn't, right? That's not like you. I know it works, but I want to prove it to myself. So I don't want to be a salesman about this, but it is true. To be the thing, it's pretty remarkable, and it really will help you. But with the double breakers, again, I was amazed at how accurate I can be. And everything I know about green reading, I have thrown out the window except for finding straight. I do find straight still, unless I see obvious break.
Yeah, that's amazing. And look, when you're passionate about something or passionate about the product, you're not selling it either, Tim. Like, you obviously want to help people with their game, and I think it's a truly amazing product. And I mean, it's the same with Skillus as well. Like, we, sometimes we do feel like we're selling it, but we're just super passionate about, connecting elite coaches and students around the world. And talking about that, like, you're actually on Skillus now. So, the thing that's super exciting about that is that you can have Tim Tucker potentially as a caddy on Skillus. So, Tim will help you a little bit with technique, but obviously has got one of the greatest minds in the game and can help you navigate golf courses, think about strategy, help you with your putting. So he's available now on Skillus, which, we're just so happy to have you involved. And then what we are doing, we're going to do a giveaway as well, Tim, because you're going to give away 5 of these markers to any student that goes and follows you on Skillus. So you're just going to download Skillus and search for Tim, press follow, and then you want them also to follow your Instagram at True Aim Marker as well. So if you do those 2 things, Tim's going to pick out 5 people to get a marker, and then you'll be able to interact with him on Skillus as well. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and also my website for the marker is trueaimmarker.com. My email is tt@trueaimmarker.com, and I would love, anybody has a question after this, I would love to have you email me. I tell people all the time, if they buy a marker, I reach out to them. I'm like, call me. I will personally walk you through this, because I am passionate about it. This is what I do now, and I want people to get better. So, and also to add to that, if anybody, like you said, I can help you with your course strategy. Something that's really big that, Bryce and I worked with and is air density. Also understanding our spin rates when the ball is wet and how to be more accurate with our irons. And that's something I'm really passionate about. I've done some work with Justin Rose and Jason Day, obviously with Adam Svensson with this. And it's really eye-opening how much we're guessing on the golf course when we don't have to. And it's not difficult. It just takes a little time to get to figure out the system. And once you do, you start to put it into your game. And again, this game's about confidence, right?
Yeah.
How much better can Bryson get? And that was what we talked about. That's why we started to develop this air density. It's like, if he just hit it a yard closer, he would have been the best ball striker in every category. Okay. Every distance. And so we said, well, man, look, the guy puts in so much time on the range. He's really not going to get any better. We have to get that yard from our course management, from understanding how far the ball goes in these different temperatures, in different type grasses, because the interaction with the turf is different, wet, hot, dry, all these things. And so again, I'm passionate about golf. I know I don't have the skills to be a good golfer, so I have to use these shortcuts, which they're not shortcuts. They're necessities if you want to be a good golfer. And it's easy to do. Yeah.
And probably the most neglected parts. Like, obviously, traditionally I've, as a golf pro, probably but do this too much, where you stand on a driving range and you work on golf swings all day and you think that is going to be the solution, or you're working on a putting stroke all day long and you think that's going to be solution. And there's this, this beautiful art and science component to the game of strategy and understanding how to navigate your golf ball around a golf course that most of us never get the ability to speak to someone like you and actually understand how to do. Often if you're a 15 marker, you'll play with your other mates who are 15 markers, and they don't have that skill set either. So you just don't have that exposure to it. So to be able to have access to Tim, it's pretty amazing. And I think we've just had a couple more questions. There's a couple of really big thank yous that are coming through here. So just for all the information, Doug North is a college coach, Tim, and he just wanted to know if you bought enough for his team, would you jump on a webinar? They trust the info from him much more than they would from him. So I'm sure you'd be happy to do that.
100%. These guys, man, I'm telling you, the level of commitment that these tour golfers have, it's really amazing to me to see how much sacrifice they take to be the best. And you know what? We all do it at some aspect of our life. We are all good at one thing.
Yeah.
There, a lot of golfers are super successful in business. And again, owning a company, it takes the same to have a successful company is like being a tour player. All the sacrifice that you've given, the time away from your family, all this commitment to your business, we all have it, right? We all have it in us. Now we just need to apply a little bit of it to our golf game, and the results will be amazing. So it's finding that right area that you need to work on.
Totally, Tim, mate. That was fantastic. I absolutely loved having that chat. And as I said, I've recorded all of this. We'll be sending that out to everyone to rewatch because, I think it'll probably take a little bit of time for most people to digest and consume. But as you said, you can get Tim at his email address. You can get him on Skills as well. You can just download Skills and actually start messaging him there if you need to. But then we'd love you to participate in the giveaway as well. So, Tim, super excited to have you involved in Skills. Thanks so much for your time. Everyone, by the looks of things, absolutely loved it. But let's do this again, like in a year's time, when everyone's just rolling the pebble and holding more putts.
Yeah, I'm really excited about being a part of Skillist and using this platform to help people get better. I really am, and I'm thankful to you for your time and the opportunity. I really am.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Tim, and we'll speak to you really soon.
Yes, sir.